These are notes 11.3, Striving for Equality. This focuses on minorities' attempt to try to gain equality during this time period. Some of the key terms from this are Americanization, Niagara Movement, National Association of Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, Anti-Defamation League, American Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. Americanization was basically the idea that um, immigrants should become a part of American culture and take on our cultural ways, um, depending on what that was, depending on the area where the immigrant lived. But it really encouraged like everything from the type of food they ate to the type of clothes they wore to become more a part of American culture. And as you can see in this picture right here, um, these Asian immigrants have adapted in many ways to the American culture by their clothes, haircuts, things like that. Now, in the South, primarily, segregation was the norm. In the North, we really didn't have segregation. Um, at this time period, we had the court case called Plessy versus Ferguson. This court case said that as long segregation was okay, as long as it was equal. So we could separate the races as long as um, the accommodations for both races were equal. Well, that's great for a court document, but actually in real life, as you can see in some of these political cartoons, um, there's a big difference between what is considered equal. Schools that were segregated, the African American schools had little to no books, teachers without very much education, um, where white schools would have many different types of resources. In this time period, some of the people that were a part of the reform movement was Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington actually started Tuskegee Institute. Um, this institute was focused on trades like woodworking and um, at this time period blacksmithing, more of a blue collar worker is what we would call them today. He believed that African Americans should work slowly toward progress in civil rights, that they should kind of accept the society, but prove themselves as individuals, and therefore they would gain more rights. W. E. Du Bois argued that civil rights were needed now. He started or was a part of the Niagara movement that denounced the gradual process that Booker T. Washington had talked about and encourage higher education. You shouldn't just get a blue collar job in woodworking or blacksmithing. Instead, we should encourage African Americans to become college professors, um, to become politicians. It doesn't just have to be to the remedial task of life. During this time period, we had some major riots and lynching that took place not only in the South but also in some of either what we would call border or somewhat northern states, Midwestern states. This example over here, this picture is from Springfield, Illinois, riot where two African Americans were lynched and killed. Um, they had originally tried to lynch two criminals that were in jail that were African American, but then um, they had uh, taken the prisoners and moved them so the crowd wasn't able to lynch them. So they kind of just went on a rampage and burnt down, I think, 200 homes, if I remember right. But that was a major concern. So many became concerned and formed this interracial alliance where it said, okay, we've got to do something to change this. So the NAACP was a part of that formation that wanted to fight discrimination and segregation. Now, the NAACP specifically was going to work in courts and in laws, get laws changed um, to improve, you know, to stop segregation and improve discrimination. Now, the Urban League was a little different. They wanted to improve lives of the poor and working class, So they would provide things like this urban league up here. They would provide after school programs, daycare facilities, coats, shoes, hats, things like that for African Americans that needed them. They were more of a societal organization. Also, at this time, we have Jewish communities that became a part of the Anti-Defamation League, and this was specifically for discrimination against Jews. There was a lot of anti-Semitism happening at this time. Um, in fact, um, a lot of them faced it in urban areas with trying to find jobs. So this league worked to find jobs, create jobs, and businesses where they did not have discrimination. This is kind of an influence from Europe at this time, where um, anti-Semitism was really taking off in countries in Europe, and it kind of had transferred to some of the urban areas like New York and Boston in America. Mexican Americans worked to form these groups that would provide loans and legal help to minorities. It was to encourage some of these minorities to start their own businesses or help their businesses get houses, um, things that if they had gotten involved in um, they had gotten into a contract that was written wrong or they didn't know what they were doing, they would provide legal help, attorneys, things like that. At the same time period, Congress granted citizenship to Native Americans through the American Indian um, Citizenship Act of 1924. Part of this was actually the reward for their service in World War One. So here's a example of a group of Native Americans that served in World War One, and then Calvin Coolidge was the president at the time when this was made in 1924 um, to encourage not only their reward, but also a simulation. If they become citizens, they're more likely to become a part of our culture and our way of life. Um, this time period, California, especially Chinese immigrants, were really kind of the lowest bar of the totem pole. Um, in fact, there was a Chinese law that was upheld by the Supreme Court that said Chinese immigrants could not own land. So some of them will put their land in the name of their children. Now, why would that? Why would a 5-year-old have land in his name? Because he was an American citizen. He was born here. So, therefore, they would put the land in their children's name so at least they could own land or have something that was theirs. All right, these are really short notes, just a little bit about ethnic and religious minorities that struggled at this time period.